Welcome. I would like to welcome you to episode 471 of the Unpopular Podcast. This is the man, the myth, the legend, Jalen Hunter, here at the Unpopular Podcast. Not only ask you to agree with me, I'm asking you to hear me out. One thing that we know for sure is weight is different for different people. Something that could be 100 pounds can be impossible for someone to lift, but could be easy for another person to lift. Weight is determined differently by different people. We also know that weight is determined differently from different teams, different players. It's all about how you look at weight. Now, obviously, you have the obvious term weight. You have the, weights, pounds. But you have the proverbial weight. You have the secondary version of weight. Heaviness, pressure, importance. All of this is determined differently by different players, different organizations, different teams. As I'm going to talk about throughout this episode, the weight of the season is being dealt with differently by different teams. Some teams have more weight than others due to expectation, due to met expectation to non-met expectations. Some teams handle weight differently than others. That's just, to bring it a little bit into to a micro aspect. Going into Sunday, the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills viewed this game differently. The weight of this game was distributed differently by both teams. One thing that you may or may not know is over the last, 5 games in the regular season, Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills have dominated the Kansas City Chiefs. I think right now they're 4-1 in their last 5 games against the Kansas City Chiefs. In the regular season, Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills just have the Kansas City Chiefs number. That's just what it is. There's no question that Josh Allen is one of the best quarterbacks in football. And it just seems like when he goes up against Patrick Mahomes in the regular season, he just rises to the occasion. But there's a reason why there was more weight to this game than you would think for a Week 11 game. Just like Lamar Jackson, just like Joe Burrow, just like someone like Justin Herbert, it may not be totally their fault, but we look at these players differently. We hold these players to a different standard because of the talent that they hold. In the same breath, we also, whether fair to them or not, compare them to Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in football, arguably the best player in football overall, and players like Josh Allen continue to get compared to Patrick Mahomes. And when you look at the resume that Patrick Mahomes has built, a lot of which that resume was built off the backs. And what I mean is, while Josh Allen is 4-1 their last 5 games against Patrick Mahomes, he also has a losing record in the playoffs to Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. In fact, the Buffalo Bills, it's either been Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow that has essentially stopped them from even making the conference championship. As great as Josh Allen is, he has never been to a conference championship. So while in the regular season there is dominance, in the regular season Josh Allen is incredible against Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. Their quote-unquote rivalry supersedes anything that happens in the regular season. Meaning the weight of this game, in my opinion, meant more to a Josh Allen. I understand that the Kansas City Chiefs went into this game undefeated, but you're also talking about a three-time right now back-to-back champion. And you don't want to get left behind. That's the thing about football. That's the thing about sports in general. It keeps going, and you don't want to get left behind. You don't want to be behind the 8-ball. You don't want to be that team where you're always just close enough, but then you run into someone like Patrick Mahomes. The weight of this game meant more to, in my opinion, the Buffalo Bills, more preferably Josh Allen, than it did Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, I'm not saying that is an excuse that the Kansas City Chiefs lost. What I'm saying is, I think it was sort of, even though, Keon Coleman was out and Dalton Kincaid was out, it was kind of expected, especially if you look at the history of this rivalry, quote unquote. It was kind of expected that the Buffalo Bills were going to win. But kind of like Lamar Jackson and whatever happens in the regular season, this particular back and forth the regular season doesn't matter. Because if you're Josh Allen, it doesn't matter how good you are. You have nothing to show for it. And I mean nothing. Yes, people can say that Josh Allen is the second or first best quarterback in the league. Yes, people can say he's the front runner for MVP right now. Yes, people can say that he is the one quarterback that probably could dethrone, let's say, a Detroit Lions or something like that. Who knows? But when you look at Joe Burrow, he went to a Super Bowl. He's the only quarterback that is currently in the league that has beaten Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. That's a stat for you. Lamar Jackson, while he does struggle in the postseason, he also has 2 MVPs. Could very well be 3 at the end of this season. He also found himself in the AFC Championship last year, something that Josh Allen has not been to. Please don't hear me say that Josh Allen there's an issue with Josh Allen. Please don't hear me say that. What I'm saying is, while this was an important win for the Bills, this was an important win for Josh Allen in his psyche, especially going up against someone like Patrick Mahomes. It also reiterates the fact that this doesn't matter until you get to the postseason, where you may very well have to play against Patrick Mahomes. The one place, Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs, the one place where you just haven't been able to get over the hump. You can destroy him in the regular season, which you have done. But if you don't see playoff success against Patrick Mahomes, which he has not. Hell, the reason why the overtime rules are different is because of Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. But the weight of this game mattered But I think that it also puts weight into what we could possibly see in the playoffs. Speaking of weight, there's a reason why we marvel at the Detroit Lions. There's a reason why when we talk about teams, we talk about a knockout punch. There's a reason why it's important to have convincing wins against good teams. There's a reason why a lot of people say that it's very, very, very risky to have to win one possession or pretty much one possession games all season. There could be a time. What it shows is, while yes, there is resolve, while yes, there is resilience in winning those close games, you're also in close games. And as we know about football, as we know about sports in general, anything can happen. The ball can bounce any type way. The kick can go any type way. You never know. This is also why, I'm just speaking for myself. This is also why I've been very hesitant in saying that the Kansas City Chiefs are the best team in football. While they have the best record, while they were undefeated, they did not feel unbeatable. They just felt like in those moments they had the resilience to win. Hell, when you block a kick against the Broncos, when things don't go the Ravens' way the first game of the season, while those moments help and obviously you get a win in the win column, it also puts weight, since that's pretty much the underlining theme of this episode. It puts weight on the team as to, how do I say it? Winning, while it doesn't completely cover issues, it does put a veil blanket over it. Winning allows you to forgive the fact that Patrick Mahomes, his touchdown to interception ratio this year has been wild. You can almost chalk up an interception or two for Patrick Mahomes almost every game. Winning allows you to overlook the fact that the Kansas City Chiefs O-line, especially the left side of the line, is god-awful. I think, I forgot his name, but he's yet again one of the most, if not the most penalized linemen in football. We marvel at the fact that they've been able to win without an Isaiah Pacheco, without Rashid Rice, injuries left and right. But it also shows, but while we marvel at it, we also forget, well, they did need a blocked field goal against the Broncos, who, don't get me wrong, the Broncos have been much better than I thought they would be this year. But yeah, it took Isaiah Likely's big toe being bigger than being large to beat the Ravens' first game of the season, and the Ravens forgetting to give the ball to Derrick Henry. And now you finally lost. I'm not saying that Kansas City Chiefs aren't good. I'm not saying that they essentially won't be the first team in NFL history to three-peat. That could very well happen. You still have the best player in football. While maybe not season to season, I think Lamar Jackson has been much better this year. I think Joe Burrow has been much better this year. We'll talk about him a little later. I think Josh Allen has been much better than Patrick Mahomes this year. But if we talk about the totality of football, I think that Patrick Mahomes is the best player in football. But one thing that I do know is this. Winning allows you to it doesn't force you to address things that need to be addressed. Because it's like it's the mantra of if it's not broke, why fix it? There are glaring weaknesses for this Kansas City Chiefs team. Not saying that they're not good enough to win it all, but what I'm saying is there are glaring weaknesses to this team. And a lot of it was exposed against the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City or Buffalo Bills, even though a lot of those weaknesses have been exposed all season. The difference is it holds more weight now because what? They lost. Now, you take the blanket off like, whoa, is that how bad their offensive line is? Whoa. Patrick Mahomes has how many interceptions? Congratulations to the Buffalo Bills for beating the Kansas City Chiefs 30-21. While, again, it's just a regular season game, there's a lot of weight to it. Speaking of weight, and speaking of a regular season game, there's a reason why. In fact, if you want a perfect example of what a divisional rivalry, a divisional matchup, a divisional game looks like, look no further than the Baltimore Ravens going into Pittsburgh and losing 18-16. On top of that, the Pittsburgh Steelers beat the Ravens without scoring a touchdown. The Pittsburgh Steelers beat the Ravens, and it was arguably Russell Wilson's worst game. Both teams are good. But one thing that I do know, and one thing that this game, if it teaches you anything, is actually there's a couple things that you can learn from this game. One of them is it's the little things. The little things, depending on the matchup, depending on the score, depending on the situation, the little things feel much, much larger. As great as Pittsburgh has been this year, and kudos to them for winning, I would say that the Baltimore Ravens beat themselves more than the Pittsburgh Steelers won this game. One thing that any player, any coach in any sport will tell you is if you have a great, and I mean if you have a great game plan, the other team does not dictate your game plan. It may dictate, some of the plays that you put in, some of the plays that you don't use, some of the personnel, but it should not dictate your game plan. It may alter it, but it shouldn't dictate it. And the issue that I have, the issue that I continue to have with the Baltimore Ravens is it feels like the opponent in some instances dictates the game plan. Let's talk about some things that we know, right? We know that the Baltimore Ravens by far is the best team in football at running. With Lamar Jackson, with Derrick Henry, with Justice Hill, they are the best running team by a mile. That is actually one of their superpowers. That's one thing that they can look at and they can continue to beat people with is their run game. While I understand that this is a passing league, you have a team in the Baltimore Ravens that have mastered how to run the ball. Yet and still, this is the third time. In fact, there's a stat, I'm sure most people have heard it, but there's a stat going around that the games that Derrick Henry has rushed less than 20 times, the Baltimore Ravens are 0-3. The Kansas City Chiefs game, I think Raiders game, and the Pittsburgh Steelers game. And what baffles me is when you go up against a Pittsburgh Steelers team, you want to dominate the ground game. While yes, I understand the Pittsburgh Steelers defense is incredible, but as we saw, there were openings, there were times where the Baltimore Ravens could have taken advantage of the run game. They just abandoned it. But to win a game against a Super Bowl hopeful and not score a touchdown is the pure definition of an AFC North game. Shouts out to Chris Boswell. He was for sure the MVP of this game. But I can't help to feel like the issues that have plagued this Baltimore Ravens team all year continues to happen outside of one caveat. Maybe it was the defense. Maybe it was the lack of explosiveness that the Pittsburgh Steelers had on Sunday. But the Baltimore Ravens probably played their best defensive game of the year against the Pittsburgh Steelers. To hold this team without a touchdown, to hold George Pickens to only 89 yards receiving, that with the moon ball, it was incredible. But on the same thing, one thing that we know is the margins are small. The margins are thin when we talk about an AFC North game, when we talk about any football game. So when you're the most penalized team in football, and then you have 12 more penalties on the day, when Derrick Henry fumbles the ball, which he hasn't done in over 500 snaps, I think, when Isaiah Likely fumbles the ball, and when Justin Tucker, the NFL's greatest kicker in NFL history, when he misses 2 kicks, 2 field goals, and you lose by 2. I can't help but look at this and say, I think the biggest hurdle blocking the Ravens from being a legit Super Bowl caliber team is the Ravens. Because while you can always say, well, this is just one game basis, this continues to happen. Well, no, not all the stuff, but it's always something. Whether it's the defense just playing horrendous and dropping every single interception opportunity you have against Jameis Winston and the Browns. Mind you, that's the last time the Browns have won a game. Whether it's Isaiah Likely's big toe with the 2-point conversion the first play or first game against the Chiefs, or it's just the dud that you lay against the Raiders. It just feels like a lot of these issues are self-inflicted. While as much as you want, or as much as some people want Lamar Jackson to at least win a Super Bowl, Lamar Jackson is one of the greatest quarterbacks against the NFC. I think he's only lost once. So if by that math, all you gotta do is make the Super Bowl and you have a great shot. It just doesn't. From last year when you just abandoned the run yet again, when you were by far the best run team, like to me, I think Justin Tucker has missed 7 kicks this year, 6 or 7. Like in this week 11, week 11. I think that at their best, when they're playing their best football, there's maybe a handful of teams that's better than the Baltimore Ravens. I still think Lamar Jackson deserves to be the front runner for the MVP. I still think that this is a good team. But I also acknowledge the fact that, and even Lamar Jackson acknowledged it, this team continues to get in their own way. And the fear is they get in their own way at the worst moments. Because now, instead of fighting for the top of the division in the AFC North, you're now fighting to hold on to a wild card spot. Making these next few games, especially these next 2, monumental. They go up against the Chargers next week, essentially this week. And then you have the Eagles. And then I think you have the Giants. Or maybe a bye week. I don't know. So these next 2 games will really tell you a lot about this Ravens team. You're really going to know if they are the Super Bowl caliber team you think they are. Because you're about to go against 2 teams that at least one of them for sure you could for sure see in the Super Bowl. And you're playing them at the crib. So we're really about to see, but maybe we have seen the real Baltimore Ravens. I don't know. And for the Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm starting to believe that it's a testament to finding ways to win. It's a testament to the fact that it's very rare, especially in the NFL, that a team wins and a team gets 18 points solely off of kicks. The fact that you can win against an AFC North divisional rival, one of the best rivalries in football, you can win without scoring a touchdown is saying something. This defense, Mike Tomlin, who I think should be coach of the year, it's been a great season. I still question how good they can be against, because again, what happens if Justin Tucker doesn't miss 2 kicks? Then you lose. What happens if a usually reliable running back in Derrick Henry doesn't fumble the ball? What happens if Patrick Queen doesn't strip the ball out of Isaiah Likely's hands in your territory? Like as soon as you get the ball, you're in the red zone. Like, what happens if that does? What happens if the Baltimore Ravens don't run the dumbest? No, I'm not going to say the dumbest. If they have the worst failed 2-point conversion I've ever seen, what happens if that doesn't happen? I know these are all what ifs and it didn't happen, but what I'm saying is the Pittsburgh Steelers played well enough to win. They also played bad enough to lose. It's just the other team didn't take advantage. And while I still trust that defense, I think that they have one of the best defenses in football. I would put that defense up against anyone. I still think that obviously there have been more people to throw their name in the ring, but I still think that TJ Watt could and should probably be the defensive player of the year. But what happens if the Ravens don't beat themselves? And what happens when you go up against a team that doesn't get in their way and, and the offense and the defense may not have it? Is the offense going to be able to pick them up? While they've done it against someone like the Giants, someone like the Jets, we look at where those teams sit right now, But I'm not here to poo-poo on the win. Congratulations to the Pittsburgh Steelers for beating the Baltimore Ravens 18-16. Wait. I said it coming into the season. I said it at the beginning of the season. I said it in the middle of the season, and I'm saying it right now. Wait. You're seeing weight dictate, and you're seeing different teams react to weight differently. Another word for weight you can say is expectations. And I said going into this season that there was no team in the NFL that had more expectations on their shoulders than the New York Jets. I also said if they do not meet those expectations, you're going to see a lot of change. You're going to have to see a lot of change. Because unmet expectations need answers and need action. Which is why you've seen you saw Robert Saleh get up out of here. You saw them maybe trade more than they wanted to for Devontae Adams. And you see now they just fired their GM after losing to the Indianapolis Colts 28-27. You know what it is? You know what's crazy? I'm not putting this all on Aaron Rodgers. In a sense of, Aaron Rodgers hasn't played terrible. Where the issue lies, and where I will put a lot of blame on Aaron Rodgers, is you bet the house on him. You made it so that everything that he wanted, he got. You banked your immediate present and the immediate future on Aaron Rodgers being the Aaron Rodgers of old, even though the last 3 years previous to now has shown that Aaron Rodgers has, I'm not going to say fallen off a cliff, but he is not at the Hall of Fame level he's been all of his career. And when you look, there's not one thing you can point to the Jets and say that is a formula you can lean on. The defense is now terrible, which is no coincidence that when you fire Robert Saleh, who is known for his defense, the defense is trash now. The running game is inconsistent. Aaron Rodgers is inconsistent. This has not been a good year for, obviously. They've lost a this team does not resemble a team. This team resembles a bunch of names that you put together. And they have the same jerseys. The colors are still the same. They go to the same building. They play in the same stadium. But it doesn't feel it doesn't feel like there's camaraderie when you look at this Jets team. I don't understand how to explain it, but it just seems lifeless when you watch them on TV. That's one thing I will also put on Aaron Rodgers. When your play isn't up to the level that they thought it would be, I would hope that your energy that you're bringing to the room is infectious in a good way. It seems like Aaron Rodgers' energy has been poisonous to this team, which is why, as crazy as it seems, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that Aaron Rodgers is even back next year. Because, I mean, a lot of people have seen the graphic going around. Between him, Sam Darnold, and Zach Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, has the worst winning percentage. And you can look on this, you can just absolutely kiss the playoffs goodbye. Now it's about the future. And the weight of expectations has extremely crumbled under this Jets team. You lost to a team that just reinserted Anthony Richardson. And Anthony Richardson he probably played the best game he's played as a pro. While he's had better numbers, he played under control. He played poised. He played smart. And this is against a good defense. Well, on paper, a good defense. It just feels like you're watching the New York excuses. It's not Aaron. It's the play calling. It's the coach. While, yes, I think the play calling and the coaching has been abysmal. Mind you, this is who Aaron wanted. I know Nathaniel Hackett was the guy, but still, what can you do? It is tough watching the Jets play football. And I don't want to leave this without actually focusing on the Indianapolis Colts, man. Sometimes a reset is necessary. Sometimes you need to sit down and look at a situation from the outside in. Because sometimes it gives you a different perspective. A lot of times it gives you a different perspective. Sometimes it makes you cherish something more, so you treat it differently. I think the best thing that could have happened to Anthony Richardson was him having to sit down for a few games. Not only seeing that, this team needs me, because as good as Joe Flacco can be, he's not the quarterback of the future. He's not even the quarterback of the present. He has good games, don't get me wrong, but no. There's things that Anthony Richardson can bring to the game that Joe Flacco for sure can and never could. And that's no offense to Joe Flacco. I mean, he's a Super Bowl winning quarterback, but still. And on top of that, I think it also showed Anthony Richardson a leader of a team looks like something, and he was not demonstrating it. I'm not saying that Anthony Richardson is now going to turn into, Jalen Hurts, or now is going to turn into a top tier quarterback. But I think that the way that he played, again, I believe that playing against the Jets on Sunday, he had the best game of his career. And it wasn't even that flashy. He was poised. He did what he was supposed to do. He didn't go out of himself and try to make crazy plays. I think that we can look up a few years from now, a few games from now, maybe a few weeks from now, and say to ourselves, the best thing that's happened to Anthony Richardson and essentially this Colts team is when they benched him. But congratulations to the Indianapolis Colts for beating the Jets 28-27. Oh, man. I've said this before, and I'll say this again. I don't believe in moral victories. I think that there's winning and there's losing. If you want to paint lessons as moral victories, then go right ahead. But I don't believe in the term moral victories. I do think that there are positives that you can take out of a loss. I do think that there are positives you can take out of coming up short. But no moral victories, no. I tweeted this, man. I was like, yo, I think you should hug. We just have to hug a Bears fan. Because, oh, boy, they lose in some heartbreaking. They've probably lost in the two most heartbreaking losses of the season. They lost against the Commanders with a Hail Mary, and they lost against the Green Bay Packers with a blocked kick. Mind you, the Bears have struggled mightily as of recently beating the Green Bay Packers. They're on a mean losing streak. And it looked like the sky was about to open up for the Bears. And they get the block. They get the kick block. Now, a lot of heat has come down on Matt Eberflus for some of the decision making. They had more than enough time to probably run one more play, get closer, and it would have been a easier, closer kick. But they didn't elect to do that. And while I understand that thinking, I also don't think that was the main reason why the kick was blocked. I think it was just poor. Now, it would be different if he kicked it and it was wide left or wide right. Then I'd be like, yeah, you probably should have run a play. You probably should have got closer. I know his stats within 45 yards, outside of 45 yards is much different. But, again, he got it blocked. It's not like he just went wide left or wide right. So I understand the thinking of, well, if you would have run a play or two or one more play, got a little closer, it would have been easier. But you still could have got it blocked from wherever you had to, a couple yards more. That's all I'm saying. But some positives you can take from this game is this was probably one of the best looking games that Caleb Williams had. Now, you fire your offensive coordinator and you just simplify you make it simple. One thing that is an underrated task for offensive coordinators, especially offensive coordinators with a rookie quarterback, is making it simple. You're going into something that you don't fully understand. So make it simple. Allow them to see, because it's extremely complex what these NFL teams are running. So make it simple for them. The great coaches are able to do that. It's been a struggle for the Chicago Bears. And Caleb Williams looked really good on Sunday. DJ Moore looked good. DeAndre Swift looked good. It looked good. Obviously, it wasn't good enough to win, but it looked good. So no more victories. It's. I will take from this that it looks like moving forward, if we get the same recipe, it looks better. Ruma Dunze looked pretty good. There is a at least immediate winning recipe, and it looked like, as much as they've struggled, they looked hell. They broke their streak of quarters without scoring a touchdown. They broke that, so shouts out to them. So if you want to take some positive out of it, I'll say that. But again, this is yet another heartbreaking way to lose. There are also some wins that you don't feel good about. I don't feel great about the Green Bay Packers after this win. Everything about this win should have spelt dominant. I understand that it's a divisional game. I know NFC North is much better this year, but everything about this game spelt domination for the Green Bay Packers. You're going against a team that has struggled mightily offensively. You're going against a team that has struggled, honestly, defensively, keeping up, at least these last few weeks. Even if you look at the numbers from this game, Jordan Love, 261 yards passing. Christian Watson at 150 yards receiving. Yet, you still have, we just have to come to terms with it at this point. You still have some of the most head-scratching decisions that Jordan Love has made. And while it didn't come back to hurt him in the Bears game, it can very well come back and hurt you in a playoff game, which we saw last year against the 49ers. I'm not poo-pooing on this win. I know, again, it's just a different feel when you're going up against a divisional opponent. But a lot of the issues that I've seen and we've seen with this Green Bay team that gives you pause into thinking, is this really a deep playoff team? Continues to rear its head. And maybe that's just who Jordan Love is. But while you can beat the Bears, what happens when you go up against a top-tier team? In fact, we've seen that on a couple occasions. The first one I can think of is the Eagles. So, in the first game of the season in Sao Paulo. So, congratulations to the Green Bay Packers for beating the Bears 20-19. Man. A sneaky, I'm not going to say sneaky, One of the least talked about teams, one of the least talked about good teams this year has been the Denver Broncos. On Saturday, right? I said the winner of this game between the Atlanta Falcons and the Denver Broncos was going to be what was going to be the determining factor. Who wins between Drake London and Patrick Surtain? I'm here to tell you I was wrong. Well, I wasn't totally wrong, but Patrick Surtain wasn't the main reason. The Denver Broncos dominated the Atlanta Falcons in every form or facet. It felt like the Atlanta Falcons did not deserve to be on the field. On top of that, it looked like a stark difference between Kirk Cousins and Bo Nix. Bo Nix looked like the seasoned vet, and Kirk Cousins looked like the quarterback that was the rookie. I still think that Jaden Daniels has done enough to want to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. I would not be shocked if Bo Nix won. I also am not surprised that people are saying that the margin is much slimmer. Bo Nix has been, and obviously he's had his moments because he's still a rookie, but he's been incredible for the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos beat the Atlanta Falcons 38-6. It got so bad, Michael Penix came in the game. This is a team. Hell, it took a blocked field goal for the Kansas City Chiefs to beat the Denver Broncos or defeat the Denver Broncos. It took a couple of failed 4-point conversions for the Ravens to beat the Broncos. This Broncos team can make some noise in the playoffs. Obviously, we'll see what happens with the seeding and what happens with Baltimore, what happens with the Denver Broncos. I think Denver right now is in the playoffs. I think it's like one of the last wild card, I believe. But I will say this. They're obviously not catching. They're definitely not catching the Kansas City Chiefs. But we'll see what happens with the Chargers. The Chargers have they have the Ravens on Monday Night Football. This Denver Broncos team can shock a lot of people. I'm not saying Super Bowl, but it can shock a lot of people. That's how good and that's how complete of a team it has been. Especially when Bo Nix is playing as well as he can play this year. And you don't want to take a lot from blowouts. Like sometimes it's just any given Sunday. Sometimes it's just the things just don't roll your way. But I think there has to be some alarm when we talk about Atlanta, and it seems like every time they lose the same way. They either get destroyed or their team is not balanced. Their offense can play well, their defense plays horribly. Or their defense can have a surprisingly great game. Their offense doesn't come to play. This game, it was just the former. They just got destroyed. But it's like this team mirrors Kirk Cousins in his career up and down. Hell, Kirk Cousins just a few weeks ago set the Falcons record for most passing yards in a game with over 500. Now, a couple weeks later, they're losing 38-6. It's just that's what you get from Kirk Cousins. That is what you're going to get from Kirk Cousins. Shouts out to the Broncos for beating the Falcons 38-6. Let's put aside the fact that the Rams were playing the Packers. I mean, not Packers, the Patriots. I'm sorry. Let's just put that to the side. The Patriots are one of the worst teams in football. Wow. Drake May has been much better than I thought he would be. The Patriots are still one of the worst teams in football, and I think they know it. They're trying to embrace the rebuild. I understand. But nothing about this Rams team outside of Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, and Puka Nacua, nothing about this team should spell like a team that continues to win. Even if you want to add, like, Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp have been in and out the lineup. It has been almost a revolving door when we talk about the offensive line. The defense isn't that good, and even with it not being that good, they have also had a revolving door with injury. While Kyron Williams has been good, he hasn't been consistent this year. The only thing that has been consistent about this Rams team has been Matthew Stafford. I think it just shows how incredible, like, if you had, and I know he's about to catch a stray, but in fact, if you had any other quarterback, obviously you have the top tier, but any other quarterback, he's gonna catch a stray. If you had Jameis Winston as the Rams quarterback, they would not be this good. I'm sorry, Jameis Winston has to catch a stray, but still, you're still a good quarterback. It is just a testament to how good Matthew Stafford is and how good he's been. Any quarterback, you wouldn't expect any quarterback to succeed with what he's had to deal with this year. Your top two receivers, you're really only two consistent receivers in and out the lineup. Your offensive line is terrible because it's dealt with injury. Your defense isn't that good, yet you still find ways to win. It's incredible if you think about it, man. Congratulations to the Rams for beating New England 28-22. Yo, we saw a couple of really good divisional games. One of which was the Seahawks beating the San Francisco 49ers 20-17. Now, they say you don't want to take a lot out of divisional games, meaning you don't want to make grand opinions about teams when they're playing divisional games because, anything can happen. You're talking about rivalries, you're talking about teams that you have to see more than once. Anything can happen. But what I will say is this, and it goes for both teams. I have less faith in both teams after this game than I did going into it. In fact, a lot of the let's say concerns, question marks I have had about both teams were answered this game. We've seen how good this Seattle Seahawks offense can be. Geno Smith continues to be one of the top quarterbacks as far as passing yards. But when you have a plethora of wide receivers and talent around him, of course you're going to have a lot of passing yards. The question and the thing that I had pause with the Seattle team is, are they going to be consistent? Can they be consistent? And what we've seen throughout the course of this year is no. Because you can beat the San Francisco 49ers 20-17, have a game-winning drive. That could be you. But then you can also just get your doors blown off by a lesser team. Now, I understand that a lot of those losses, DK Metcalf wasn't there. But even still, and DK Metcalf is one of the best wide receivers in football. But not having one wide receiver shouldn't just completely derail your team, especially when you have Jackson and Jigba, especially when you have Kenneth Walker. You shouldn't fall off a cliff. And that's what it feels like for the Seattle Seahawks a lot of times. I think that this team can make some noise in the playoffs. It has to get there first, but I think it can make some noise. It's just, I also can see a team that doesn't even make the playoffs. I also can see a team that, if they do find the way to make the playoffs, they get smacked first game. I can see it. And that is it just speaks to the inconsistency of this team. And for the 49ers, I talk about it, man. First of all, let's get this out the way. Juwan Jennings is, or at least this year, has been their best wide receiver. I understand Brandon Ayuk is out, but even when Brandon Ayuk was playing, he wasn't great. Deebo Samuels hasn't been great all year. Jawan Jennings has been their best wide receiver. It feels like the Super Bowl window is closed. Christian McCaffrey's been out the lineup most of the time. Now he's back, and he did have 79 yards, but that didn't matter. George Kittle was out. It just seems like, and that's what I talk about. I talk about it. I talked about it before. I talked about it when Joe Burrow said the Super Bowl window is my entire career. We'll talk about him in a second. You have to capitalize, man. You have to capitalize because you may not make it. I felt that, obviously it's not the Super Bowl, but I felt the same way about the rest. That's why I was so upset. That's why I was outwardly upset with the Ravens last year. I'm not even a Ravens fan, but it's just like you had a historic team. And the one time where you were definitively better than the Kansas City Chiefs, the defending champions, in the AFC Championship at home, you do what you did. It just, now when I'm looking at this 49ers team, the defense is nowhere near as good as it's been. The offense can't, Brock Purdy has been okay. The offense can't maintain anything because they keep getting hurt. So it's like there's no consistency in the lineups. The Super Bowl, I'll say it like this. I could see them. Obviously, there's a couple teams where I don't see them beating in the NFC. But if they did find a way in the Super Bowl, I couldn't see them beating the Ravens. I couldn't see them beating the Chiefs. I couldn't see them beating the Bills. I couldn't even see them beating the Chargers. I think the Super Bowl window is closed. Like, for sure closed. I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, I'll definitely come here and say I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. But congratulations to the Seahawks for beating the San Francisco 49ers 20-17. We are watching and we are witnessing history right before our eyes. We are witnessing literally the first time that I can remember in NFL history where you can honestly say that it's not the quarterback's fault that a team is in the situation that they're in. And I obviously there's been different situations where it hasn't been the quarterback's fault, but you know how they say at the end of the day he's the quarterback. At the end of the day he needs to be better. We can't say this at this point. Let's talk about what we know with this Cincinnati Bengals team. First of all, the LA Chargers beat the Cincinnati Bengals 34-27. Let's talk about what we know. This is the first time in NFL history that the Cincinnati Bengals have the leading passer or the passing yards leader, the receiving yards leader, the receiving touchdowns leader, and the sacks leader, all on one team. Yet they're not only under 500, they have about a 10% chance of making the playoffs at this point. They need a lot of help. They essentially need to win out, and they need for someone like the Ravens to lose every game, which I don't see happening because they have the Giants coming up in a couple weeks. You know, I talked about this. I said that what team that has had an extremely loud, in a negative way, had a loud offseason came the next season and been juggernauts? You can talk about any sport. What team has had a negative, loud offseason, and the previous season or the following season, they just go out and be juggernauts? It doesn't happen, especially not in a team sport. And on top of that, I said it. I said, don't let Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins fool you. This organization, the Cincinnati Bengals, is a poverty franchise. They are a poorly run franchise. People let things distract them from what's real. I feel like one of the reasons why it took so long, and they're still not there, obviously, but it took so long for the Jaguars to accept what they are is when they made that AFC Championship. Jalen Ramsey, Blake Bortles, they made that AFC Championship and they almost probably should have beat the Patriots, but they didn't. Success allows you to, or success. What success does, it blinds people a lot to what's real. That trip to the Super Bowl that the Cincinnati Bengals had against the Rams, it blinded them to a lot of things. How good Joe Burrow is. Joe Burrow is a top 5 quarterback in the league. This year, you can argue that he has been the second or third best quarterback. He's been definitely better than Patrick Mahomes. In fact, he's been the third best quarterback this year. Jamar Chase leads the league not only in touchdowns, I believe, but he for damn sure leads in receiving yards. Trey Hendrickson leads the league in sacks. Yet and still, they're not about to make the playoffs. I'll go on a limb and say it now. They're not making the playoffs. It's just organizational malpractice. I talked about it, bro. When you have someone as good as T. Higgins, why are you playing with his money? Now, 9 times out of 10, this is T. Higgins' last year as a Bengal. I talked about it. When you have someone as good as Jamar Chase, why are you playing with his money? Now, he did take out an insurance policy on himself. There could be a case where you don't have either Jamar Chase or T. Higgins. I'm leaning more towards you might have Jamar Chase. You might get a deal done because I don't think he wants to play with anyone outside of Joe Burrow. But I'm almost sure T. Higgins is done in Cincy. On top of that, the same issues that they've had continue to strike. They haven't had a consistent offensive line, and they haven't had a great defense, especially the secondary. But what do you know? We talk about how bad the Ravens secondary has been, and then a lot of people want to point to the Cincinnati Bengals game. Well, let's not talk about how much yards the Cincinnati Bengals offense gave against Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. They're gonna look at this game and look at the fact that they were down almost 20 points in the first half. I think it was like 24-6. And they had a furious comeback. I think they scored 21 straight points. And it must, which I understand the frustration of Joe Burrow. I get it. When your margin of error is so slim, when 1 or 2 plays, Joe Burrow had 356 yards. T. Higgins had the best game of this season for 148 yards. And you still lose to the mind you, I understand that the Chargers have had a really good defense, but Khalil Mack, their best defender, did not play. Asante Samuel Jr., I don't think played. And when you understand that the team is not good and that you don't have a defense that can help you, you don't have a defense that you can lean on, one or two plays. I think Joe Burrow probably had two bad plays. I know he had an overthrow to Jamar Chase, and I think he completely missed one because he was getting pressured. Those two plays dictated the game, and that should not be the case. I know it might be shunned upon. I know it might be like, what? The Cincinnati Bengals is a poorly run organization that allows themselves to masquerade as a good organization because they have generational talents. Well, what has that got you outside of a Super Bowl appearance, which you haven't been back since? You haven't even been close. Well, you did go to an AFC championship, but you lost. The Chargers have been much better than I thought they would be this year. Yeah, there's still some inconsistency with Justin Herbert, but when he plays great, he plays great. I think the issue has also been the lack of talent to emerge around him, even though Ladd McConkey has emerged as a wide receiver one, and J.K. Dobbins has been good rushing the ball. I'm really interested to see what they look like against the Ravens on Monday. But this is just malpractice at this point. To have a team so incompetent but have the talent that they have is crazy. You can say it's slow starts, which I agree with. But you have to ask yourself, why is it that you have all this talent and you continue to have slow starts? That's like the Cincinnati Bengals calling card is slow starts. Yeah, man. Congratulations to the Chargers for beating the Cincinnati Bengals 34-27. I think, what? I think this is one of those games where I feel much worse about the winner than I do the loser. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that I have hope in Dallas. I think all is gone, all is lost in Dallas. I think, Zach Martin did look like he got hurt. I hope it's not serious. Dak's out for the season. Cooper Rush, even though Cooper Rush did throw for 354 yards against the Texans, I don't see much success from this team moving forward. I think that they should just blow it up. And I understand that Jerry Jones is probably the biggest thing holding the Dallas Cowboys back, but he's the owner of the team. What you gonna tell him to sell it? Like, come on. But I feel much, much, much worse about the Houston Texans after this. Let's say this. First of all, the Houston Texans beat the Dallas Cowboys 34-10. I know when you're hearing this, like, what? Joe Mixon had 109 yards. I think he had 3 touchdowns. But I'm starting to really doubt I'm really starting to doubt if this Houston Texans team can make any noise in the playoffs. While, yes, Joe Mixon has been a godsend to them, and Joe Mixon, he's been incredible when he's been playing. But C.J. Stroud has looked nowhere close to what he looked like his rookie year. You can say, well, this is what happens when they have tape on him, but I don't know. The offensive line is god-awful still with Laramie Tunsil. Like, it's just – and then the defense. Wow. The defense, I think the defense looked good against Dallas because you were playing Dallas, and Dallas is not good. there was a lot of opportunities where Cooper Rush just threw the ball to the ground, which is why I'm shocked he had 354 yards. I don't know if this Houston Texans team can, Christmas is really going to show me a lot how they play against the Ravens. You're going against a team that struggles defensively, especially in the secondary, even though they did just get Tre'Davious White looked really good against the Steelers. And I think they just got Desmond King. So maybe even though Desmond King ain't done much since Phillip Rivers, but I am interested to see what they look like against the Baltimore Ravens. But I'm not. Yeah, Joe Mixon looked really good, but he's pretty much. Oh, and Stingley looked really good, but outside of that, it was. Yeah, congratulations to the Houston Texans for beating the Dallas Cowboys 34-10. I don't need to stay on this long, bro. The Detroit Lions beat the Jacksonville Jaguars 52-6. The Detroit Lions had over 600 yards. The Detroit Lions scored on, I think, nearly every single possession they had outside the last one. I think the last one was a kneel down. I've said this before, and I will say this again. There is no better team. You know what it is? There is not a team in the NFL that is better. You know when you see an avalanche, how it just continues. Once it just continues to build and continues to grow. Once it gets to like it never really stops growing. But once it's at that point where it's just unstoppable, you just got to move out the way. When the Detroit Lions are rolling on all cylinders, it's like they're an avalanche. They cannot be stopped. Mind you, yes, I understand that the Jacksonville Jaguars is one of the worst teams in football. They didn't have Trevor Lawrence, but Trevor Lawrence being there would not have changed this. They may have scored more than 6, but it wouldn't change 52. The Jaguars have one of the worst defenses, and it looks like Doug Pearson's probably out the door. When the Detroit Lions are firing on all cylinders, there is not a team in the NFL that can beat them. Jared Goff threw for 412 yards. Amon-Ra St. Brown had 161. David Montgomery. They have two number one receivers. Jameson Williams would be a number one receiver on multiple different teams. They have 2 number one receivers. They have 2 number one running backs in Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. They have Sam Laporta. Then they have by far the best offensive line in football. Like an avalanche, when the Detroit Lions get going, they are unstoppable. And you saw that against the Jacksonville Jaguars when they beat them 52-6. So that's out to them. There are some teams that's just ready for the season to be over. Yo, the Saints beat the Cleveland Browns 35-14. This is such a Jameis Winston stat, bro. He threw for, let me make sure. Yeah. Jameis Winston threw for the second most passing yards in week 11. He had 395 yards. And the Cleveland Browns only scored 14. Taysom Hill almost had combined 400 yards. That game, boy, these teams, man. Jared, I ain't got much to say. Cleveland Browns ain't that good. The Saints definitely ain't that good. Taysom Hill, he has it doesn't obviously this was probably the best game of his career, but he always has one of these games where it's just like he is the true definition of a Swiss Army knife because he just does it all. But both of these teams, which is also crazy because the Cleveland Browns have one of the, at least on paper, have one of the best defenses. It's just, yeah, it's so unbalanced, man. Which is crazy because you started the season with Amari Cooper, with Jared Judy, with I know David. How did that man's name just? Oh my gosh, bro! I'm looking at his face. How did his name just escape me? The running back, man. I forgot his name. I see his face. Nick Chubb. You had Nick Chubb, not at the beginning of the season, but it's crazy. But shouts out to the New Orleans Saints for beating the Cleveland Browns 35-14. Yo, man, the Minnesota Vikings beat the Tennessee Titans 23-13. I like the fact that the Minnesota Vikings are finding a way to win. I like the fact that their defense is still really good. You still have, Jordan Addison had a really good game this time around. Obviously, you still have Justin Jefferson. But what I'm not liking is the fact that they have to continue to find ways to win. Like, they're not just winning. Like, it's been a struggle for them, offensively at least. And Sam Darnold for sure has come down to earth. Now, he's not terrible as we thought, and he is not as good as he was to start the season. He's still an okay quarterback, but when you get outplayed by Will Levis, now, when I say outplayed, it wasn't that much outplayed, but he did have more passing yards than Sam Darnold. I'm just saying it. Yeah, again, congratulations to the Minnesota Vikings. They are one of the best. They have one of the best records in football. Aaron Jones has been great for this team, even though I think he only had like 39 yards. But yeah, man, I don't know. Congratulations to them. Congratulations again. And I think the last game that is the Miami Dolphins beating the Vegas Raiders 34-19. I don't trust I don't even know if they will make it, but if they do, I don't trust Miami in the playoffs. Especially if they do. If they have home field, that might be different, but they don't. They're not going to get it. They're not. They're comfortably number 2 in their division, which means they're for sure not going to get it. I don't know. And the Vegas Raiders, there's absolutely nothing good about this team outside of Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers had 126 yards. He's probably been, let me think about this. Yeah. This year, he's been the best tight end in football. George Kittle has been in and out due to injury. Sam Laporta is great. It's just the Detroit Lions very rarely look at him. Because they have so much talent everywhere else. Obviously, someone's going to get lost. He has big moments, but they don't really be looking at Sam Laporta. Trey McBride has been really good, but the team, he's been inconsistent for the team. Obviously, Travis Kelce has been inconsistent as hell. Yeah, Brock Bowers has been the best tight end in football this year. That's the only well, Max Crosby is still pretty good, but that is it. And shout out to Jonnu Smith. He had a pretty good game against the Dolphins. Against the Raiders, but he's emerged the last few weeks. But I don't see it. But they did beat the Raiders 34-19, and Tua is healthy, so shout out to them. That has been week 11. The bye weeks were. Speaking of that, That has been week 11. Shockingly, the biggest news out of this weekend, came from a team that didn't even play. Came from a team that doesn't even have a good record. The biggest news of this weekend came from the New York Giants when they announced that they will be benching Daniel Jones and promoting Tommy DeVito as their starting quarterback. I think the first and loudest thought in my mind is, what the hell took so long? Now, I've heard a bunch of people. I've heard Eric Mangini. I've heard Rex Ryan. I've heard Mike Tannenbaum. I've heard Dan Orlowski, Ryan Clark, Marcus Spears, the great Mina Kynes. I've heard Nick Wright, Colin Cowherd. I've heard it all. And I do think that Daniel Jones is possibly closer to his best season than he is his worst season. I know Colin Cowherd likes to do this real estate analogy. Take out a real estate agent's best year and worst year, and that's pretty much what their average is. I do think that Daniel Jones is possibly closer to his best year than he was his worst year. Remember, Daniel Jones did break his neck, and he's been with an organization in the Giants that hasn't been good since Eli Manning. They have mismanaged so much. They have mismanaged so much potential. It is crazy. They haven't really given him an offensive line. And the weapons that they did give him, they also took away from him due to poor management. Now, a lot of it was because they prioritized Daniel Jones over that talent, which was a grave mistake. But that's where we're at. I said what took so long because if you look at Daniel Jones, he hasn't been great. Now, yes, you can say it's because of the stuff that's been around him, but we're still here. And as currently constructed, he has not been great. He's not been good. He's been a bottom 5 quarterback. But it also reeks of incompetent organizations. Again, I'm not saying that an organization once incompetent, always incompetent. I'm not saying an organization can't be a great organization and then never turn to incompetence. The Giants have had some great years, bro. The Giants used to be a juggernaut. But a lot of the decisions from the front office that obviously trickles down to the team or trickles down to the roster is why they're here. Prioritizing, and I said this when it happened, I understand that it's a quarterback-driven league, quote unquote. And I understand that you want to make sure your quarterback is happy, but you should always prioritize your best player, which the Giants did not do. And you let Saquon Barkley not only walk for nothing, you let him go to your divisional rival. in the Eagles. And now he's looking like the Super Bowl piece that they've been missing. And the person that you chose him over is now benched. Again, you can say it's because it's more of the organization that failed Daniel Jones. Cool. Daniel Jones did look okay, really good in college. I got it. But whether it was the organization or not, we're here. And Daniel Jones hasn't been nearly as good to have a consistent starting spot. And now he's been benched. Yeah. You know what's crazy? Imagine if they kept Saquon Barkley and made this decision. You would have been still better because you have Saquon Barkley now with Tommy DeVito. It's crazy. Yeah. It just shows you. This man got fired on his day off. It just shows you, like, I don't think Brian Daboll's a bad coach. I just think that this is a situation that's been a lot of decisions. It's kind of, we talk about Jerry Jones and how much he has a thumb on the Dallas Cowboys. Well, the Mara family, same thing. Is just not as loud when we talk about the Giants. It's just not, clearly it's not as loud as Jerry Jones. And we've seen recent success or more recent success with the Giants than we've seen with the Dallas Cowboys. But a lot of the front office decisions, a lot of them, from draft picks to trades to contract negotiations, a lot of that decision has essentially derailed a once promising franchise. And now Daniel Jones, whether you can say it's his fault or the organization's fault, now Daniel Jones is yet another poster child to dysfunction with the Giants. You know, I didn't want to talk about this, but never mind. You know what sports allows you to do sometimes? It allows you to forget that we're watching our favorite players, we're watching our favorite athletes, and there is a shelf life for their sports life. LeBron James, even though he is a freak of nature, he's one of one. LeBron James's career is going to come to an end soon. Steph Curry's career is going to come to an end soon. Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, like their careers are going to end soon. Maybe, I'm not soon, end someday. I am not going to sit here and say that I am an expert in tennis, because I'm not. I don't know diddly squat about tennis. I'm not good at tennis. I know names. I know like Serena Williams. I know Roger Federer. Those two really got me into. Those two really sparked my interest in tennis. Like when I talk about the GOATs, I'm talking about Roger Federer and Serena Williams. And obviously you have you have Rafel Nadel. You have Novak Djokovic. You have Arthur Ashe, Coco Jones, Even though he did lose, Rafel Nadal has essentially played his last game in competitive tennis. And obviously Rafel Nadal is one of the greatest tennis players we've ever seen. I am always going to have a soft place in my heart for Roger Federer, but Rafael Nadal, at least in my eyes, is not far behind. The sport of tennis would not be where it was if it wasn't for the contributions of Rafael Nadal. The Spain wouldn't be such a powerhouse in tennis if it wasn't for Rafael Nadal. What Carlos Alvarez wouldn't be here. He's even said it. Wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Rafael Nadal. Rafael Nadal finished his career singles at least 1,080 wins to 228 losses. He has 92 career titles, fifth in the Open era history. And he has one of the longest running tenures as the number one ranked player. Obviously, I don't play tennis. I'm not a tennis player, but I can recognize that tennis would not be as popular as it is. It wouldn't be as global as it was if it wasn't for someone like Rafael Nadal. So for that, I say congratulations on your retirement. Congratulations on an epic career. And thank you for your contributions. As a fan, as fair weather fan I am, as a fan, thank you, Rafael Nadal. Oh boy. This is what I didn't really want to talk about, but I'm going to address it. I understand that in Mike Tyson's eyes, legacy is nothing. You know, I get it. And I listening to him talk, listening to some of the things that he says, I understand why he would get to that point or how he got to that point. I get that. Or got to that point of thinking that legacy doesn't mean much. I get it. And I also understand that I don't think Mike Tyson's legacy has changed since fighting and now losing to Jake Paul. But I think my issue with it is, actually, I don't have an issue. I'm just giving my thoughts. As a Mike Tyson fan, it was sad to watch. But I'm not one of those people yelling that it was fake, it was fake, it was fake. But I am one of those people to say, well, the Mike Tyson that we have seen in these sparring videos, the Mike Tyson that we've seen as of recent, even though he is almost 60 years old, that's not the same Mike Tyson that I saw against Jake Paul. But then again, I did see a 58-year-old boxer going up against someone more than half his age and looked old as hell. I don't know what anyone should have thought was going to happen. This is why I didn't really want to talk about it last episode, because I kind of knew this was going to happen. Now, shouts out to Mike Tyson for, I think he was $20 million richer. Shouts out to him. Ultimate bag getter. But nothing about that was shocking to me. Even if it wasn't, because even if it was or it wasn't fixed, right? The man is almost 60. And he looked all of 58 years old against Jake. How old is Jake Paul, bro? 30-something? Yeah, man. I will say that Jake Paul has brought a level of excitement, and he's done something that boxing has struggled to do over the last few years, and that's bring a younger demographic, a younger crowd. Now, you can argue if it's real boxing or not. You can argue what you want to argue, and I'm not here saying you're wrong. I think that there is a gimmick aspect to it when you continue to fight people that are old. You continue to fight people that aren't really boxers. Now, the one boxer that you did fight, you lost to, and that boxer isn't even that good. So I do understand the level of gimmick that is brought on by Jake Paul in these fights, but I do recognize that he has done something again that boxing has struggled to do, and that is bring a younger crowd and brought new eyes to a sport that essentially has been dying. So, and he's a master promoter, a master marketer. So shouts out to him. But I don't know what we expected. A 58-year-old man, well past his prime, fighting a 30-something-year-old Jake Paul. So shouts out to both of them. Lastly, before we go, we have the unpopular topic of the day. And currently, the 76ers have the worst record in basketball. As I'm recording this, the 76ers are 2-11. And kind of like the New York Jets, I'm sorry. The weight of expectation of this season is I don't think there's a team that has more expectations on their shoulders than the Philadelphia 76ers. When you have an Olympic champion at this point and an MVP in Joel Embiid, you have Tyrese Maxey, who you just paid, and now you have Paul George. And as we speak right now, they're 2-11. It's almost impossible not to say. I mean, things can happen, but I ain't seen it. It's almost impossible that this team is going to make the playoffs. Mind you, this team at NBA Finals aspirations, they may not even make the playoffs. And they had a team meeting, and it was reported that Tyrese Maxey was going at Joel Embiid. Not going at, but calling out Joel Embiid for being late, for being not available. First and foremost, I don't understand and like the fact that team meetings are being, the information, the conversation is being leaked. I don't like that. That's kind of crazy. Because that's supposed to be intimate. That's supposed to be the team. But, and this is a prime example that you take on. There's a reason why the team hasn't looked good. Even though he's not playing, you take on the personality, you take on the mannerisms of your best player. And if your best player is not there all the time, if your best player is late, if your best player just doesn't seem like he cares, that's what you're going to get. It is, at this point of the season, it has been a colossal failure. I understand that all three players, Paul George, Tyrese Maxey, and Joel Embiid haven't played, but still, at least one of them has played. At least two of them has played. Yeah, it's like the Jets. It has been a colossal, at least early. It's still early, but I don't know how many teams have started 2-11 and made the playoffs. I'm sure that list is very skinny. And you're talking about changes. Yeah. But there you have it. That's been today's episode of the Unpopular Podcast. I truly, truly appreciate you guys. If you want a Popular Podcast shirt, hoodie, sweater, long sleeve joggers, the link is in the description below. I have multiple different colors, multiple different designs. Get your Unpopular Podcast merch today. Also, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm trying to get as many subscribers as possible. If you like the content, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to subscribe. It definitely means a lot. Also, please follow the DSPs. That's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud. I appreciate all you guys. If you like what you're listening to, and no platform is bigger than the other, if you are listening on a DS, please follow it. I'm trying to grow, obviously, the podcast, and I can't do it without you guys' help. So all my DSP listeners, please tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to follow and subscribe. It definitely goes a long way. Also, please follow the socials. Follow Instagram and TikTok. I post pretty much daily there. If you want shorts, if you want stories, we can go back and forth. Just keep it respectful. And I don't mind going back and forth. That's probably the quickest way to get to me. It just means that not only that you're listening to me, but you are passionate about whatever is being talked about. Please follow the socials. It definitely means a lot. And until next time, much love.